Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today, I'm really excited to return to Quo. I have some mind-blowing information from Quo about the relationship with your higher self. Some additional information on Quo about the Merkaba, even a comment about Drunvalo Melchizedek. So everything really is connected, because that implies that the information in The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life by Drunvalo Melchizedek is true, because I've been trying to wrap my mind around how it links to the Law of One, and it really does. It seems to be completely consistent. In fact, the walk-in that Drunvalo Melchizedek claims to be is probably from the Confederation, which would be from the Order of Melchizedek discussed in the Urantia and who knows what else. One of the most interesting things about the Law of One, of all the information in it that has changed my life the most, would be the concept and understanding of the higher self. Now, I've gone about a process of trying to communicate with my higher self, in trying to invite intelligent infinity into my life. If you check out those earlier meditations I have around the Law of One, I have an intelligent infinity meditation, which was really amazing. And I started doing that, and I started feeling like I had a connection to my higher self, as I understood it, described in the Law of One. Some higher entity, unique to me specifically, that is aware of all my timelines from the future in that 6.5 density. When I tried to do an episode on the higher self, it was very difficult. I even started to really struggle at the end of it to understand some of the passages that Ra gave. As many people would say, Quo is a little bit easier to understand than Ra. So I wanted to come back to this concept of the higher self as it's talked about with Ra, with some additional information, some additional questions outside of the higher self question, but overall the emphasis being that. And I think you're going to love it, as I love these Quo readings so much. Jim is talking to Carla. Carla is the one channeling. Jim asks, "We are wondering about the relationship we have with our higher self, how the higher self is formed, how it communicates with us, how it decides what information or assistance to give and what not to give. Just in general, what is the dynamic relationship and how does it function between ourselves here in the 3rd density and our higher selves at mid-6th density? We are known to you as the principle of Quo. Greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator, in whose service we come to you this evening. It is a great honor to be called to your circle of seeking, and we are very happy to speak with you concerning the higher self. That concept is at the core of those entities of help to you during incarnation that are unseen but nevertheless very real. However, as always, we would ask that each of you that listens to or reads these words use your discrimination and your powers of discernment to decide that which is helpful to you and that which is not interesting. Let those words of ours, which do not rouse your interest, slide by without a second thought. Focus on those concepts you feel may be helpful. If you will take the responsibility of using that discrimination, we shall relax and not be concerned with the possibility of infringing upon your free will or interrupting the rhythm of your spiritual walk. We thank you for this consideration. We would note also, before we begin, that because of requests within the circle, the speaker this evening is Hatonn rather than Latwii. Nevertheless, we call ourselves the principle of Quo because all of us, Hatonn, Latwii, and those of Ra, collaborate in responses to these questions. You ask concerning the higher self, what precisely the higher self is, and how it relates to you through your incarnation. We would begin by describing to you this higher self in a way that may make some sense to you in terms of your linear mind and your intellect. If you stay strictly within space-time, in the world of manifestation, you can only go as far as the end of third density. In order to progress further, you move into fourth density, into the precincts of time-space. So here we see them making a differentiation between space-time and time-space. Into the environment of energy, from electricity or electrical energy, as opposed to the energies of chemicals and the distillation process that goes on in your physical body at all times as you distill the helpful ingredients within foods for the use of your physical vehicle and eliminate the dross or the extra. However, if you consider that in third density you still retain the energy body that will carry you into fourth density, and that has carried you through your incarnation, then you can go further with your intellectual considerations. Please imagine yourself in your indigo ray body, moving into incarnation in third density, aligning with the physical vehicle and connecting to it by means of the silver cord, so called. Then imagine that same body at the end of the physical incarnation, releasing its hold upon the physical body that is no longer viable and moving into the process of graduation. First, in the indigo ray body, then in the violet ray body. And once the steps of light have been walked and you have graduated into fourth density, imagine moving back into the indigo ray body and then into physical incarnation for the electric type rather than the chemical type. You do this throughout the long reaches of fourth density and fifth density. Finally, you graduate to sixth density, having learned the ways of love and the ways of wisdom. In sixth density, still in your electrical body, you refine the lessons of love and wisdom, combining them again and again until you find the secret to acting with compassionate wisdom or wise love. Ultimately, you reach a point somewhere in the midst of sixth density when you discover that all that you have ever desired has been satisfied except for the hunger and thirst for the Creator. And so you turn from the world of desire. You no longer think of what you will do next. You only think of the Creator, and that draws you ever closer to the seventh density, the density of foreverness. At the point at which you find that you have achieved all your goals in the outer physical world, have performed all the services you hoped to perform, and have integrated all of the learnings that you hope to gather, you turn back to the past, so-called only in space-time, and give to yourself a gift. You give to yourself a thought form in which is stored every lesson that you have learned, every gift that you have expressed, every dream and hope that has fired your journey. You give the highest and best self of which you are capable within third density, within fourth, within fifth, and within sixth to yourself. That thought form, called the higher self, can also be called the magical personality. A magical personality represents a form of self, or image of self, or potential of self, if you will, that has to it a completeness that is lacking in those stages or forms of selfhood that one finds being explored in the earlier phases of development. Now, this would seem to be on its face a contradiction. because to be a self, after all, would suggest that one is always precisely the self that one is. And understood in this way, it would seem implausible that there could be a portion of the self that is missing to itself. Yet this is precisely what we would suggest to you is the preponderant experience of being a self. Within your third density experience, you find that you undergo several phases of being the self as you grow and develop within the life experience. You are first an infant, then a child, then an adolescent, a young adult, a mature individual, an aging individual, and finally, one who perches upon the very precipice of larger life. And in each of these phases of your life experience, you can find different meanings associated with the concept of self that you associate with yourself. You find different ways of being the self that you are. As we have suggested, these ways will often involve a particular focus of desire. And desire does play a very large role in situating the way of seeking and the way of service that each self finds appropriate to itself. You could say that the desiring mechanism is a filtering process which gives a particular intensity to the practice of focusing on certain aspects or facets of one's experience that one feels would profit from further exploration. The process of undergoing a life of desire, however, is not a static one. Desire has a way of reformulating itself as it undergoes the experiences of fulfillment or disappointment, of challenges, of further aspiration, and further possibilities for further desiring, which will form on one's horizon. As one reflects upon the self that lies at the root of these desires, it then becomes clear that the self itself is something perpetually in the process of being created and transformed. To be sure, there is a continuity in the process. That is to say, the desires that one has had, the question that one has posed, remain with one for a period, and is from questions currently asked that questions to be asked will evolve. It is therefore not without meaning to say of oneself that one is a self, but it is not a meaning which is set in stone. What is important is that there be a sense of responsibility, if we may use this word, that one learns to exercise in the movement through the various phases of exploring the potentials of being the self, so that, for example, an action that is performed today receives tomorrow the respect of the unanswerable. That we mean by this is that one acknowledges a past that belongs to oneself, even at a time when the circumstances have substantially changed. It is possible, however, to become so foreshortened in the sense of who one is that one's boundaries harden. The factors involved in this experience are well enough recognized to you. They are fear, anxiety, a reactivity to the pain that can emerge in one's life experience, so that one draws inward and begins to think of oneself in a more and more limited way. There are very few who escape this effect completely, and as a result of processes such as these, one begins to think of oneself as an isolated unit of being separated from all others. In this circumstance, one can hardly think of a higher order of self that could serve as a resource to one, not from without, but from within. So the first principle that we would have you recognize when dealing with the problem of selfhood is that it knows no outer or inner limit. Only if you recognize this principle can the notion of higher self make any sense. We will start by saying a few words addressing the initial question on what information the higher self chooses to give the self and why it does so, or said another way, what information does the higher self withhold from the self and why? As this instrument is perceiving, technically speaking, the higher self does not limit, so to speak, what information is available to the self in theory. It is, in a sense, what we choose to look at, the higher self and the self in third density being 2 points on a circle, so to speak. They are aspects of the same self, so we can, in theory, tap into anything our higher self has to offer us. However, we can, in the same way, look at what we choose, and we may choose not to look at our higher self at certain times. It is a matter of facing the self, which most individuals find harder than facing other selves or other higher beings of higher dimensions. However, facing the self is the most natural point of contact or way of contact. In truth, you can contact your higher self whenever you want and wherever you are by desiring to do so. However, this, as any skill in the quest or path to adepthood, takes practice and process, patience, commitment, focus, and the foundational intent or service. We would like to expound further upon the topic of interacting with one's higher self. We would encourage you to consider, when consulting the higher self, that it is not necessary to take the position of a supplicant or neophyte begging for wisdom from a source you cannot comprehend or is superior to you, but to consider your relationship with your higher self as a partnership in all ways you work together. In the realm of sixth density, concepts of time and space grow close to meaningless. As your higher self observes your growth, that portion of you is learning from the you that is learning. It is a portion of yourself that you are calling upon. In all ways, you are infinite and ever growing. Your higher self is not there to be your God or any type of elevated superior that you must go through any certain ritual to contact, but is there as your friend, as your best friend. Your higher self is the most complete, highest, and best expression of that vibration that is you, the you that you are now, and the experience that you are gaining right now is a part of the experience that the higher self retains. The higher self may combine your experience with all the other wisdom it has gathered on its journey, and then present it back to you in an augmented fashion that will help you with the very issue with which you are dealing right now, because it was that very issue that helped you provide the wisdom that your higher self now gives back to you. Your higher self is virtually anything you can perceive it to be. Your higher self is the limit of your imagination, for it is everything that you ever thought and cared about and done. Therefore, if you need it, it will be provided. If you desire your higher self to communicate with you by making the stars dance, if you can conceive it, it can happen. A certain person who sees a coin laying on the ground as they walk by may think nothing of it, while another may be able to interpret it as a sign of something, that one puzzle piece in their life that was missing, because they ask what their environment provide them with information. There is no one way in which communication is established. It does not have to be through prayer or ritual or any attempt at communication with words. Your higher self can communicate with you through any means to which you are open. There is also your specific guidance system, the artifacts your higher self has created for you and sent back, known to many as the male and the female guides, and the third guide that is a union of the two, often seen as androgynous. These were created to be a more tangible example to you. It will help you in more direct ways. You and your higher self are on this road together. There is no separation, and being your best friend, your higher self will always respect your wishes, even ones you may not know you have, agreements you made before your incarnation, realizations of your unconscious, the desires you have that you do not realize or express. The higher self realizes these, and they will not in any way infringe upon your free will or step on the toes of your learning, for they were once in your shoes and know just how important it is that you learn at your own pace, which is why at times you may not get the particular answer for which you are looking. It is not that the higher self does not listen or does not care. It only has one eye open to the big picture of what your soul is planning, both for the incarnation and for the unconscious desires of your heart. We've been speaking to you this evening on the concept of the higher self and your relationship to it, the types of information that are transmitted both from you to the higher self and the higher self to you. The higher self itself is connected to what you may see as another facet of yourself in this circle of beingness. That is to say, the higher self has its higher self as well. This totality of beingness is a resource upon which the higher self may call in the, shall we say, framing of the possibilities of experience for the mind-body-spirit complex that each of you is within your third density illusion. Thus, there is a great wealth of information and experience that is available to each entity, such as each of you is. When you are within your daily experience, going about your routines and accomplishing various tasks, you are for the most part motivated and empowered by your own desires, experiences, and relationships. When there is difficulty within any experience, you begin to ask within yourself as to the solution of such difficulties. If your own experience is unable to provide you with satisfactory answers, it is, as you say, a natural function of the questing mind, body, and spirit complex, which you are to call for assistance, whether this call is conscious or subconscious, because at this time, the other aspects of your being, such as your higher self, are able to give information or inspiration, a direction, a clue, shall we say, that will help you on your journey without infringing upon your own free will. For the call that has been offered has been heard and shall be responded to. My friends, there are two basic ways that you as a self can work with the higher self, which is that aspect of you that could be called the highest and best, or the accumulation of all that has been learned. One way is as part of a closed system. The other way is as part of an open system. Those who work with the closed system are working under the assumption that the individual self is a closed system. However, the higher self resides within the open heart. It is closer to you than your own breathing or your own heartbeat. Now, because the higher self resting in the heart is under its beneficent influence, the preponderant inspiration from contact with the higher self shall have to do with love. Because choosing love over fear, choosing service to others over service to self, choosing radiance over self-defense, is that which polarizes an entity positively and enables that entity to be ready for graduation. There is no need in terms of graduation to work with the self as an open system. In working with the higher self in a closed system way, then perhaps the best way to encourage words to come from the conversation you are having in the silence between desire and its response is to write down your questions, and to the best of your ability, write down the thought which comes to you on the heels of posing that question to the higher self. The entity who created the book Conversations with God was using this technique, and it is available to all who wish to use this resource. Now, if you wish to access the higher self as part of an open system, you are basically working with the infinite supply of love light energy that you are receiving from the earth, through the feet and upwards through the body and through the energy body as well, exiting out the top of the physical head as well as the seventh chakra. You are using the higher chakras, that is, the chakras above the heart, the blue ray chakra of communication, the indigo ray chakra of radiance, of being, and the violet ray chakra, which is that which upholds the gateway to intelligent infinity. Due to the placement of desire when in the energy body, you ask your question of the gateway of intelligent infinity, thereby causing a response to flow from the Creator into your body, meeting the upward spiraling love light energy that is always yours at the chakra point of keenest desire. Some refer to this as the movement of Kundalini. If your energies are devoted entirely to seeking the Creator, it is likely that the inspiration and information from above will move through the gateway, through the upper chakras, bouncing down to that central chakra of the heart ray, and then bouncing back up to the indigo ray, where it will reside and where you may converse in the language of concepts. It is to be noted that there are advantages to working with the higher self in an open system, where you perceive yourself to be part of all there is and free to contact all those parts of the self that are included in the higher self. Working with an open system, there is no heavy influence of love, wisdom, or power. The system wherein you, as a personality and a self, are not truly separate from the rest of creation is a powerful model. It opens the self-definition, as you think about yourself, to the realm of endless potential. This is not to say that you can become substantially different from yourself. The combined energies of your soul stream, through many, many incarnations, have produced within you a characteristic vibration. What you are interested in doing, whether in a closed system or an open system, is decreasing the difference between your vibration or frequency and the vibration or frequency of the one infinite Creator, pure, unconditional love, the Logos, the one great original thought that created the universe. Working with an open system, you are able to retrieve more specific information from the various aspects and experiences of yourself in various incarnations. So there is more flexibility and variety in the information and inspiration you may garner working with the concept of the self as an open system. Nevertheless, it is always to be noted that in third density, the main thrust of each seeker's work shall need to be that work which improves polarity and deepens and intensifies the choice of service to others, so that the steps of light can be walked at the physical death, in the spirit body, and the new environment of fourth density or higher can be attained. Looking strictly at the goal of graduation from this, your last incarnation on third density planet Earth, it is perfectly acceptable to choose the closed system as the simpler system within which to work, and we would recommend this for any who are not drawn to the idea or the dream of the magical personality and living life as a priest. If you are drawn to create within your life a magical persona, and if you are drawn to working with that persona, then you are a good candidate for working with the open system concept of self and doing the inner work necessary, not only to keep the lower chakras open and the heart open, but also keep the upper chakras flexible and responsive to your desire. Working with the open system is possible to pull in not only all the many aspects of the higher self, your basic guidance system, but also many other entities that are drawn to you, particularly because of your frequency of vibration. The quality of your devotion and the honesty and intensity of your hope of serving, these are tools with which you may sally forth to seek the truth. You are most emphatically not alone. Question: I was wondering about the relationship between an individual self's higher self and the individual's six-dimensional social memory complex that he or she will be a part of. We are those of Quo. We thank the one known as M. We believe that we grasp her query. The relationship of the self and the higher self to the social memory complex of which the higher self is a part within the mid-sixth density is that of an overshadowing energy that can be accessed by the desire of the self within incarnation. This can be accessed because the social memory complex of the sixth density entity is part and parcel of the depths of the sixth density entity's self-definition It is not simply that a member of a social memory complex defines itself as part of that complex. It is rather that all of those entities who have worked together in collaboration for one common purpose over time become closer than friends or lovers or mates. They become one in thought, one in hope, one in intention. So there is the energy of all of that sixth density social memory complex, which rests like an aura around the higher self. It is not that the social memory complex as a whole has more pointed advice to give you or more helpful resources to offer than the higher self by itself. It is that accepting the higher self's social memory complex as part of the higher self, one is able to access the overwhelming power of the combined seeking of all those involved in the social memory complex. And it is often helpful simply to focus the self within that third density momentary desire. There is a clarifying energy to the social memory complex itself that is over and above the individual energy of that higher self that you may call your highest and best self. In another channeling that was done in 2009, I thought this was interesting because they mentioned energy body several times in that last channeling as in relation to the higher self. So there's a question. I was wondering why ancient people are recorded in our holy books as seeing God descending down from a cloud, and whether this has to do with what we call a Merkaba physically manifesting. We are those of Quo and aware of your query, my brother. We find it beyond our capacity to explain to you precisely what prompted writers of such works to describe various aspects of the one infinite creator as descending from the clouds. However, we may say that beyond all anthropomorphic imaginings of writers, there is our understanding that each of you has a Merkaba body, the energy body. This vehicle is not a physical vehicle, it is an energy vehicle. Nevertheless, it is perfectly capable of sustaining you within various environments, which do not include third density physical Earth. However, this energy body or Merkaba is more real than your physical body. The physical body is a nested set of energy forms, with their integrity field held by the thought of that particular form, whereas the energy body is closer to the one infinite creator in that its thoughts are more coherent. Those who learn to project themselves and have astral experiences are using their Merkaba body or their energy body in which to move around and experience, and before and after your physical death. That is the body which you are using to experience life. You will find, after you move through the galaxy of physical death into larger life, that you have been in this body all along and simply did not have the conscious awareness, for the most part, that you had this energy body. However, my brother, you can feel the integrity of this body if you sit in meditation and simply ask to see it. The various emotions that are often scorned by humans are the very stuff of the energy body in their refined and purified form. And each of the chakras within that energy body has its own characteristics and its own complex of emotional sets, as it were, which together create an elegant and highly efficient vehicle for that infinite and eternal entity, which is you. Please, Quo, I would really appreciate if you could recommend a meditation where I could learn to change my focus from this consciousness to enter my Merkaba body at will, as staying here and being of service would be so much easier for me if I knew I could leave at any time. Quo explains, we would suggest in this, wise my brother, that you continue in your study of the energy body as you find it discussed within the works channeled through this research group. There are various sources of this material within that instrument calls the raw material, and also within other Confederation channelings that reside in the archives of this group's online library, as you begin to feel that you have a greater and greater understanding of this energy body. The direction of an effective and skillful meditation for you then would be the entering into of each of the chakras, opening them, enjoying them, and seeing how the energy moves up into the open heart, and therefrom to do work in consciousness in the higher chakras. We feel that a repetition of the visitation by you of your own energies will begin to make this body more real to you, so that you are more and more able to use it. In another channeling in 2001, Carla asks, what is the Merkaba? M wants to know more about the matrix of the spirit, the potentiator of the spirit, and how to use the potentiator of the spirit to work with these energies that have been archetypally jump-started. I can refer her to the works of Drunvalo Melchizedek if you want to focus on the latter portion of the question. I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my sister. It would indeed be our recommendation that the reference to the one known as Drunvalo Melchizedek be made for the one known as M in this area, for it is indeed a large area of study, and we would not be able to do it justice with the energy that begins to dwindle within the instrument's vehicle. So what we see here is Quo recommending Drunvalo Melchizedek. So there's some other interesting things that I found, and it's always a little bit different in doing a episode on Quo because there's just so much different stuff, and gathering it together can be a lot of fun, but I end up reading all night long. It's interesting. Maybe my higher self is guiding me to these materials. For instance, I was reading some Ruth Montgomery. I don't know by the time you've heard this if you've heard my episode on walk-ins, but of course they asked about Ruth Montgomery. They seem to confirm that Ruth Montgomery is legitimate. Another interesting question is when they asked, I'd like to know if you cover the entire known universe or just a portion of it. So they say this instrument has trouble relaying the concept we gave her. We must curb our levity. We showed her the picture of us as paint being tossed over the galaxy and dripping down on the sides. What covers the, as you put it, known galaxy? What covers the infinity, that is, the creation, is love. We have, shall we say, arrived at a vibration of experience in which we are conscious of that love, in which we can see that love, and therefore are desirous only of following that love wherever it may lead us. When we are needed, we hear that call, regardless of the so-called distance and those who call, and we come, and we give what aid we can. And meanwhile, we study what is occurring in the creation. For at this particular point of our own evolution of spirit, we do not fully understand the plan of the Creator, and we collect all the information that we can to further our understanding of this plan. Our basic understanding is that there is indeed a plan, and with this, shall we say, article of faith, we go forth and do our work, while the teaching branch sends forth its love and its light to the individual entities dwelling upon spheres such as yours, who have cried out so greatly that we could not help but hear you. Were you in the farthest reaches of the farthest density in this creation, we would hear you, for our ears are only those receptors which hear the cry of the child in need of love, and that is your planet. Your planet is fearful and is in great need of what it does not have, and we are not able to give to your planet that which it truly desires. That is a sign which shall be obvious to all man, for we cannot interfere with the free will of your planet. Therefore we remain somewhat hidden, somewhat questionable, and available only to those who are led to hear us by their own desires. In that way, we do not infringe upon the free will of anyone who may wish not to hear what we have to say. As we can see, one of the key components to connect to the higher self is to be in service to others, because the higher self only exists at 6.5 density and above, and only service to others goes that far. So the question is, the higher self is available to those negative polarities, all the way up to 6.4 of density. So there is some flipping point where the higher self only serves to others. So the question is, how do we polarize service to others as much as possible? In your conversation before the session began, you were speaking about the fact that in the sixth density, the density of unity, the two paths of service to self and service to others converge and become one. This is indeed true, and yet, as the one known as Carla said, there is great virtue in the polarities within the present density, your density of choice. We see each of you as powerful beings, sparks of the Godhead principle. Were you to do nothing but live your lives, reincarnate and live that life, and reincarnate and live that life, and so forth, you would advance, for the pressure of evolution is inexorable. However, if you wish, you are also quite capable of accelerating the pace of spiritual evolution for yourself. And we are most pleased to be able to expatiate upon this theme. For there is a virtue to the acceleration of the seeking process. The environment of third density physical existence is in many ways a harsh environment, spiritually speaking, for it is heavily veiled. The overarching truths that all is well and that all is love are not visible within the depths of third density living. Indeed, it is as though you are in a dark environment, that valley of the shadow of death, as this instrument has been known to call it after the psalmist. However, just as even one candle can be seen for half a mile, so spiritual light can never be quenched, and the light shines through for all, even in the darkest night and in the thickest of illusions. And that light, which cannot be quenched, lies within each and every heart of each and every human that dwells upon planet Earth. There are many ways, however, to hide that light under a bushel, as the phrase is from your holy book, the Bible. And so our remarks are along the lines of how not to hide your light, how to be fearless with the power that lies within you, and how to harness it and direct it. The nature of polarity is such that it echoes to the very fabric of your third density illusion. Each of you is able to name many dynamic opposites: light and dark, good and evil, warm and cold, wet and dry, and so forth. The very fabric of your existence has the overarching glyph of the Star of David, that figure which is made up of the upthrusting male principle in its delta form and the downward pointing pyramid of the female principle. As they come together and merge, so they form the Star of David. There are ways to look at the male and female of the illusion, the attributes given to the female side and the attributes given to the male side of the so-called tree of life, and then those androgynous energies which are in the middle of that figure, lending coherence and the relationship to the whole. And you are creatures of the Star of David and the tree of life. You are walking matrices which are able to juxtapose and merge the physical and the metaphysical, the outer and the inner, the temporal and the eternal. Each of you is a walking gateway between two worlds. By calling upon the spiritual or metaphysical aspect of yourself, you awaken within yourself a great array of resources, and these resources may be used as you choose. Primary among these resources, in terms of increasing your rate of positive polarization, is your awareness of yourself as a person whose will is powerful. When you set your intention to do something, you change things for yourself in terms of your energy body and in terms of that connection that you have with the metaphysical world. And so the first thing we would suggest to those who would wish to increase the rate of polarization is to set your intention. There are various ways of doing this, the most simple of which is to say, I set my intention to be one who wishes to polarize as quickly as I possibly can and still be able to integrate my learning. I'll say that again. I set my intention to be one who wishes to polarize as quickly as I possibly can and still be able to integrate my learning. However, it is efficacious to put more time in on the creation of this statement to yourself and your faculty or will. You may wish to write it out or have a ceremony or ritual whereby you, in conjunction with your guidance, set this intention. It is often true in the physical world that intentions vanish like smoke. However, within the metaphysical world, where thoughts are objects, the setting of an intention is a powerful resource. Naturally, once this intention has been set, it is well to revisit that intention and confirm it whenever there seems to be a situation which calls for a polarized response. The quality of memory is very important in sustaining an intention. If you can create a vivid enough memory of this complex of feelings, will, and passion that you have disciplined and shaped into an intention, then you are able to access it when you need to remember the intensity of this intention. In the daily life that supports such an effort, it is well to place daily opportunities for entering the silence and resting in your own open heart where the Creator abides in fullness. We do not feel the need to govern your choices of how to enter the silence. For some, there is a green cathedral, and the Creator is felt most fully in nature. For others, there is a totally interior experience which can be had anywhere. For others, there is a practice that calls them, whether it be one kind of meditation such as vipassana or another such as transcendental meditation. Entering the silence is a very personal thing, even an intimate thing, and we would not feel comfortable recommending one way over another of doing so. However, in general, we may say that it is only when there is a sustained practice of entering the silence that the catalyst of daily life begins to be vulnerable to being seen as the illusion that it is. If there is not a steady practice of meditation of one kind or another, there is a far less firm place where the observer herself may look upon the challenges of a busy life and see through them to the peace and the power that lie within faith. That faith that all is well. That simple statement, all is well, is a good mantra for any discipline, for it is at the heart of faith. Often entities among your people speak of faith as though it were a matter of believing this or that. Yet faith has no content. Faith is simply an attitude, a knowing that all is well, and that all is well, all will be well. This knowledge may give you peace during challenging times. Those situations in life which are rich in opportunities for those who wish to polarize always have to do with choosing love over fear. As we have said before through this instrument, it is well to ask the self when faced with a challenge, where is the love in this moment? When that question is asked, there are times that you can see no love in the situation. This creates the opportunity for you to open your heart and allow the Creator's love to move through you so that the love in the situation has come through you. It is not a discipline in which you must express what you know as much as it is a discipline in which you allow yourself to become a lighthouse, cleaning the lenses of your lantern so that there is no hate or jealousy that is clinging to you, so that you have to become transparent in your personality, for you cannot love the world of your own self. You shall surely run out of love quickly, for the love of the mind and the human heart is finite. Yet the love of the one infinite Creator is itself infinite. Thus, polarizing towards the positive is, in some part, a matter of gently moving yourself out of the way of the light that flows through you. It is a great collaboration, my brother, for it is not unimportant that you yourself, in your humanness, love. This love that you have colors the light of the infinite one in beautiful colors made of your personality, your choices, your quirks, your uniqueness. As you bless the light that flows through you, you bless the world in your way. You are lightening the consciousness of planet Earth. It is indeed the greatest service that any can offer, that service of allowing the light to shine through the personal self and out into the world. Can you claim some credit for doing this? Not at all. It is your personal, intimate, and secret gift offered from the mystery and the depth of your own open heart. And yet once offered, it shall color your whole life and make of it a great adventure. When the next time of decision comes to you, my brother, slow yourself down, move into your open heart, and allow the full riches of the catalyst involved to flow through you. Positive polarity is not a matter of ignoring anything. It is a matter of choosing to let the shadow side slide and focusing on the positive. It is a matter of asking for a viewpoint that sees the wider and more comprehensive picture of the situation. As this instrument would say, it asks you to dolly back, to pull the camera of your attention backwards to a place of observation, which calls upon the highest and best within you. It calls upon your guidance. It calls upon your awareness of who you are and why you are here. And it calls upon the memory of which we spoke earlier, invoking that decision that you made at the outset to serve the one infinite creator by polarizing towards service to others. Lastly, in order to accelerate the pace of evolution, we would encourage that which is called a sense of humor among your people and what we may call a sense of proportion. Remember, as this instrument would say, you are but dust, and to dust you shall return. Remember that the glory that moves through you asks you not to be glorious, but only be an instrument. Let the Creator play you. Your job is to stay in tune. Therefore, tune yourself with memory, with affirmation, with mantra, with all of the tools and resources that you find helpful. And my brother, when you fail to remember all these things and feel that you have crashed and burned in service to selfness, let the dust settle, take yourself up, and know that it shall be a new day as soon as you forgive yourself for being human. There is never an ending and never a failure to one who is on the path of positive polarity, because every morning is a new life. You may hit the reset button as often as you need to do so. As always, my brother, those of the Confederation of Planets are happy to rest with you in your meditation and offer a carrier wave that will stabilize your own vibrations as they flicker a bit. We do not attempt to communicate at those times, but merely be with you and to bathe you with our love. And I thought that would be a good place to stop because it's such a beautiful message. As anybody that's listened to the channel knows, that's the thing that really transformed me. It was my choice of service. It was that moment when I decided to try to manifest and create a reality more than just myself, more than just things for myself, was to go beyond and express the joy that I had in helping others and in choosing to help others more than myself, and to shifting the focus of my attention away from myself into helping others. For me, that was hard because some ways I'm shy and don't want to go out and do things. So I tried to figure out within my own dynamic ways that I could be of service. This is one of them, but not the only way. And I continue to see opportunities in what I see. You are given opportunities every day to be of service, and you will be rewarded for the service. Don't expect the reward, but I'm telling you, the other day I had a friend that needed me to pick up something, and I was so excited to help them. And so when I did, it was such perfect timing. As I drove home, I listened to this one perfect live version of Pearl Jam song that I hadn't heard in a long time and would be really hard to dig up. And it was right at that perfect guitar solo moment. And I was gifted this beautiful moment as I drove to pick up what I had to pick up. So you will find as you start to be of service that you will have these beautiful little rewards. It is a wonderful thing. Don't think that you're just doing this because you're some sort of slave or you're doing work. The service is a joy. Just for the people that say service to self is a joy, it is a greater joy. You're sharing this joy with so many other people when you help other people. And it could be anything, the tiniest thing. You can do it in the privacy of your own home by releasing light. The beautiful message of this is through your own meditation, you are improving the polarity of the world and yourself. So the discussion at the beginning of this about the higher self is very important. It really gives you an idea that the higher self will communicate with you through a number of ways. That lost coin that you find, little messages that you see in your environment. Another interesting aspect is the description of your guides, one being male, one being female, one being androgynous. I had not read this and was aware of having these guides. They're not even of my own ethnic origin, which is funny. And they're very funny. My guides are very funny. And I thought for parts of my own incarnation that they were just voices in my head, and perhaps they are. But I have found very common that when people say that they have interactions with their guides, it is in this pairing of two or three, two guides or three. And Drunvalo Melchizedek in his book talks to guides in the same fashion. And many other people that I have met that are in my group that also talk to guides. So they're implying in this, the higher self sends the guides back as additional instruments to aid. But it all sounds so programmed. There must be some key that we can unlock. I want to know everything that the higher self knows. The higher self doesn't want for me to do that because that's a billion years in the future, I guess. But I would say that if it is myself, then help me to polarize and improve. If you're able to travel back in time, which this implies that you are, once you get to 6.5 density, that time travel becomes a variable, then we really have to consider the effects of that time travel. Perhaps the creator is placing restriction on the powers of time travel in that they cannot directly change time. But obviously, if you're creating a higher self that can go back in time to help itself, and everybody has their own higher self, what does that mean? What sort of limitations is the higher self put under? So the higher self cannot violate our own free will, but wants to help us, wants us to go through the lessons, and explains in the beginning of that why there are times that it doesn't seem like the higher self is helping you. What I have found is the more I move towards polarity of choosing to help others, the more I'm in communication with my higher self, at least on my own soul's path. Everybody's going to have some sort of different explanation of that. I was also interested that at least there's some confirmation that the Merkaba is within the law of one universe, and that Drunvalo Melchizedek has some semblance of credibility, which means I'm going to have to spend an episode talking about that book, because there's some crazy ideas that come out of that book about transferring in to fourth dimension, which is what he calls it. That material really indicates a unbelievable transformation into fourth density, which could involve the magnetosphere dying out, people's memories going away, plastics dissolving, a whole bunch of different scenarios, which are crazy enough that when I posted it in the Facebook group, I had to remove it because of the fear that it created. There's a lot of crazy events that can happen, but the most important realization in the Drunvalo Melchizedek is that you can create your reality, that the earth chooses certain people that are connected with the earth and the sun, and those people create the realities around them. And no matter what's happening in the world, whatever bizarre and terrible things that seem to be happening in the world, you're not a part of it. Your reality is being created. So if you feel like you're connecting to the earth and the sun, then you may be one of those people, and that may be part of the reason you're accessing this material. Your higher self is going through a process of protecting you in this transition. So choose love over fear. Another thing that's talked about a lot by Quo, that's consistent with the Melchizedek information and a part of the Merkaba meditation that covers both of the stuff that we've talked about, is the heart being this expression of the creator, that the higher self is within the heart, and multiple times it is referred to as another dimension. As I've explored this more, the heart is both a part of your body and beyond it is the creator of the universe. We really need to change the way we think of the heart. You always think of your organ, the heart. There appears to be a mass that's like the pineal gland, but even bigger in around where the heart is. And that is what we're talking about. When we awaken the Merkaba, it is my feeling that it is much easier to activate your energy body through your instinct, through the feminine side, through just letting go and doing it, awakening these energies. So when Quo says just focus on your energies, that is the more intuitive way. And the later teachings by Drunvalo Melchizedek are talking about the sacred space of the heart, that you can awaken the Merkaba just by going into the heart and bringing light into the heart. And so that might be the easier way. Remember, a lot of people can be turned off by the Merkaba meditation because it's so specific and difficult. And that is not the only way. There are many ways. That's for this more masculine perspective, for the engineer, for the scientist that wants to know the exact way that it's working and that can't get past it in order to become spiritualized in the proper manner. So it's serving a particular purpose and is not necessarily for everybody. I hope this gave you a little bit more to chew on as we begin to expand upon our understandings of the Law of One that go beyond the Law of One sessions and the raw material, and we continue to learn about the universe and the secrets behind it. This material continues to awaken memories within me, because what we're learning is really not a learning, it's a remembering. This is stuff that we already knew and have known for a long time. And so this information that I'm giving you is not just information you're learning. The reason you're finding it so interesting and the reason that my words are so magnified, it's not me, it's that you're remembering. And the images that you had when you were listening to this, I would really think about what those things are, because you are remembering. Continue to remember. That's what we're doing now, is that we're remembering. So I'll definitely bring some more Quo on the way, and I appreciate you guys so much. I love you so much. All episodes of The Reality Revolution can be found at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.